would encourage you to not back off of the retirement contributions, and you don't have to as a business owner because there are some great options for you. I'm 47 and thinking about starting a business and becoming my own boss. What are some key strategies for business owners that you'd recommend for me to not fall behind in retirement planning while I pursue my dreams? I'm going to hand off to the business owner right now.
Wow. If I had known years ago, 20 years
Yes.
ago when we started Gen Wealth, what I know now, there are a lot of things that I would have done differently, but I'll also say it all worked out. But one of the first things when we saw this question, Scott, you'll remember my first response was just immediate and almost guttural. Have more cash reserves than you think you're going to need, because I don't know if this business is just you or you and some employees, but it is extraordinarily hard to get revenue started from any new business early on. That's just part of it. And so if you think you're going to need 2 months worth, you need to make an effort to have 4 or 5 months worth of income set aside just to cover, on top of your normal emergency fund, just to cover those expenses that the business might have during that period of time. A lot of times when people are starting their own business, they don't necessarily have a physical location, so maybe you're not on the line for a rent payment. We were in those early days as well, and that was a big deal to make sure that as well as a small number of team members, that we were able to cover for them. And to be very transparent, there were days early on where we did not pay ourselves, and we had to be okay with that. So I think just be very prepared from a cash perspective. That being said, if at all possible, I would discourage you from using whatever retirement savings you already have as your cash resource. It might be there, it might look like it's easy, but not only are you withdrawing, X amount of money, let's say you withdraw $50,000. Well, you're going to have the taxes on that $50,000, and because you're not 59 and a half, you're going to also have a 10% penalty on that $50,000. And one of the biggest things, Scott, that we don't usually even talk about is the lost earning potential. At 47, you might be 20 years out from retirement. So what looks like $50,000 has multiple doubling periods for you between now and retirement. That might be a $60,000 or $80,000 or even more withdrawal from your retirement just to take $20,000 out now. So just be careful, and I changed figures on the examples there with you several times, talking about $50,000, and then I randomly said $20,000, but you get the point. If you're withdrawing money now, there is a significant impact on your retirement 20 years down the road.
I think about the planning phase of this too. When he says he's thinking about it, where are you in the planning process?
Yeah.
Do you have a business plan? And do you know how disruptive the change could be? We don't know about your current employment situation, but certainly if you're working for someone, and it sounds like he is because he wants to become his own boss, which we can talk about that a little bit later on becoming your own boss.
Yes.
Your clients become your boss, right?
That's right. You
still have a boss. But I think the disruptive nature of this in terms of how long will it take to match your current income, because that's the disruptive part, right? If you're used to living on your salary and maybe a spouse's income as well, and you erase one or both of those to go into business for yourself, when is the cash flow or the profit going to match your current income, or at least get close enough that your lifestyle doesn't change and your retirement contributions, if you're currently making them, doesn't change? Do you have customers already lined up? Is there income that's going to start from day one, or is it going to take some time?
Scott, circling back to matching that current income, I'll draw a parallel here with what we often do with people who are getting ready to retire. When somebody comes in and says, oh, I'll be fine on 80% of our current income, we can retire and we'll be okay with that, we actually have them test that, because I know people say all the time, you'll find that in studies, you can live on 80% of your income. What they're really talking about is more related to your gross income, because you've been contributing maybe to a 401k, etc. We're talking about net income, and I don't know very many people who can make it on 20% less net income and maintain their current standard of living. So whatever your objective is in terms of income, what you think you're going to be living on for those first few months or however long, you and your spouse, if you're married, you need to go ahead and test that before you pull the trigger on this.
If you've listened to this show for long or watched, you know that we haven't always been financial advisors. So this next story comes from pre-financial advisor Scott. I built it, and this is not being a business owner, but I built my own home years ago with my wife, and we contracted it ourselves, and we did a lot of work ourselves, but we really bit off more than we could chew, and our mortgage payment at the end of that house building project ended up being quite a bit more than we had bargained for, than we had budgeted for. And for a time, until interest rates went down and I was able to refinance, I did back off of my retirement contributions through my employer at work because I had squeezed my margin. And that wasn't a fatal mistake. I've overcome that, but I had to work harder, right? Because it really didn't happen for very long. In fact, it was about 3 years, right? Mm-hmm. You don't think about that being a big deal, but as now financial advisor Scott put that hat back on, I can see if I wouldn't have backed off of those 3 years of contributions, how much farther ahead I would have been on my path to financial independence. And I know that business owners, if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, and Janet can attest to this, you think about building the business up as a piece of that financial independence, and that's perfectly fine. But I just would encourage you to not back off of the retirement contributions, and you don't have to as a business owner because there are some great options for you.
Well, and along the lines of, investing in the business as your future retirement source, especially at GenWealth with the type of business that we own here, everything we have touches the market. Right. The business is market related. Our personal investments are market related. And so we as owners have been focused on having some diversification outside of that. And I would say, not at the time that you're starting the business, because you need to be all in on being sure that you give this every effort you possibly can, because frankly, a lot of businesses don't make it. They don't make it long term. So give it everything you can. And then when you get to a point where you can raise your head up and go, okay, now what? Be sure that you build in some layers of diversification for your retirement planning. And in your case, that's probably looking at retirement plans. When you get where the business is stable enough for you to be able to set that up, and it might be just you. And in that case, we would look at doing a SEP IRA, that type of thing for you. I'll let Scott go into more of those details, but I do want to take a moment, just business owner to potential future business owner, to encourage you, at least for me, it was worth it. Chip, there were some long, hard days and, for a long period of time, to be very transparent, to get everything up and going. People talk about it being an overnight success. Well, here we are, 20 years into our quote unquote overnight success. It will look like it's a short time to everybody else. To you, it will feel like forever. But I will absolutely, unequivocally say I don't regret it for a moment. It was hands down a great move for me and for our family, and frankly for our team as well. It's been good for everybody involved, and that includes our clients. But you've got to be sure that this is going to check the boxes for you as well.
I think in the interest of time, we probably can't get into the details of these, but I do want to encourage you to reach out to a financial advisor and find out some information about these retirement plans. There is something called a SEP IRA for business owners, a solo 401k. There's also for higher earners a defined benefit plan, and a simple IRA if you have employees. So depending on the structure of your business, how it's set up, whether you're going to have multiple employees or it's just going to be you and maybe a spouse, one of those might be a good option for you to be able to continue to make retirement contributions. And I would encourage you again to talk to a financial advisor to talk through the specifics of those. And we can do that here at GenWealth. For you or any other business owner listening today, you can call toll-free 866-653-PLAN, 866-653-7526, and we can talk that over with one of our financial advisors.